I didn't even know that it was possible to exceed like your highest expectations. I kind of thought that was the ceiling.
You said it's our highest. How are we going to go above our highest?
Exactly. So talk about that. Talk about how our expectations are running our lives.
Yeah. You know, in the book, I talk about expectations are the secret software running our life, you know, meaning we aren't always reacting to the events of life themselves. We're reacting to our expectation of these events. So even when you take the pandemic for example, and obviously, you know, our hearts go out to everyone that lost someone, you know, during the pandemic. You know, outside of that, when you look at, you know, how we have reacted, right? So like the whole even debate about wearing a mask and all that. So much of it is because we're dealing with what was unexpected. So our expectation was, hey, this is how things are supposed to be. So reality is like, hey, there's a lethal virus that is here. That's reality. Now, our expectation then colors how we handle it. Some people get mad, some people get angry, some people get, you know, retreat. Why? Because the expectation is controlling the response. We aren't actually responding to the reality itself. And then when you apply that to people, you know, it's like, okay, you're in a relationship, you're married. Are you really responding to your spouse or your partner, or are you responding to your expectations of them? And so if that person meets your expectations, you're happy. If that person doesn't, you're devastated. You know, you're looking at, okay, it's your job. Okay, I wanted to make a certain amount of money, be at a certain title by a certain age. Okay, I'm at that age and I don't have the money and I don't have the title. A lot of people don't know how to handle it. They're upset. Why? Because they had an expectation. Well, what happens if you take the expectation off? Then let's look at reality, right? So the whole idea for this book is that this secret software, expectations, has to be reprogrammed. Because the same way the software on our phone, you can't go a week or two without another update to the software. Why? Because it's got to run optimally. And there's something new that the phone needs in order to run the way it was designed. Well, for us, we have to reprogram the software. We've got to get control of our expectations so that we take the power back in our life. And then once we do that, we then position ourselves to exceed whatever the expectation is. But first, we have to be aware of what our expectations are. And then second, we have to set those expectations, which is a process of identifying if your expectation is realistic or not. And is it spoken or not? If it's realistic, how do you know? If it's in your control. If you can control it, I argue you can expect it. The second part, if it involves someone else, you got to communicate it. Too often we have all this anxiety, frustration, anger, bitterness. Why? With somebody else, because we never actually asked them if we can expect what we're expecting. So it's about learning to know what you control and then communicating. And when we do those two things, we can set expectations. And once they're set, then we can begin to live in a way that is free.
Now, so this comes down to the management of the expectations. But for some people, for them, this is just how they are in their mind. This is their default, how they think, how they act. What they were told growing up. You mentioned that in the book, how all these things shape our expectations. But for some of us, we don't realize we got these expectations. We just think we're just doing what we're supposed to do in life. We don't say that, oh, I'm have this expectation or that expectation. And one of the core tenets of your book, the reason why we need to pay attention to this, the reason why we need to all read this book, is you say that unmanaged expectations lead to an unhappy life. So
yes.
Break that down for us. Help us really understand why this is something that we definitely need to pay more attention to.
Because, you know, unmanaged, it's like, you know, we have unmanaged expectations. It's just that, you know, we're expecting everything. You know, we're expecting the spouse to be great. We're expecting the job to be amazing. We're expecting ourselves to overachieve. We're expecting, if you have kids, for your kids to be this, expecting, you know, if you're a person of faith, expecting God to do that. So all of these unmanaged expectations set us up for massive devastation, right? Because they're not set. They're not based upon an actual process that lets us know whether we should be expecting it or not. So when our expectations run wild, we find ourselves in a situation where we're perpetually disappointed and like, oh man, my job isn't what I want it to be. I'm not making the money I want. You know, I got married, but man, this marriage ain't what I thought. You know, I'm in this relationship. Everybody told me getting in a relationship was better than being single. But why am I not happy? You know, I've been praying all my life. God still ain't answered this prayer. You know, there's, you know, I've been saving. I still ain't got the money for the house. My goodness, what's wrong with me? Right? All of these unmanaged expectations. set us up for devastation. And one of the reasons why I believe most people are not happy right now is because they are not really looking at their expectations and then saying, okay, do I need the expectation to begin with? Because part of the process of living free is releasing, okay, well, what would happen if I took the expectation off of myself about where I should be at a certain age? Because, by the way, where is it written that if you're not at a certain place by a certain age with a certain amount of money, that you are a failure? Did you come into the earth with a manual that said, okay, at age 30, if you don't have kids, you ain't married, you ain't making six figures, there's a problem? Well, no. So we create these arbitrary benchmarks in our life, and then we judge ourselves based on our expectations. And the reality is, if we don't meet it, we then judge ourselves incorrectly. So when I talk about unmanaged expectations in the book, I'm saying this is the area. I know you all spend a lot of time on talking about money and managing money, and that's really important. And the same sort of process that goes into managing money is one of the reasons why I wanted to write this, because you got to manage expectations. You got to manage them. The more we learn to manage expectations, to know what we can expect, to know what we shouldn't expect, and to let ourselves off the hook, because everyone, in my experience, walks around with this guilt, this secret discontent, this secret disapproval, this secret insecurity. And a lot of it's just because of an expectation that's arbitrary. Where did it come from? Why are we, okay. So in the book, I talk about when I was, 30 years old, I was an executive for Sony Pictures, and I wanted to be vice president by 30. Okay. I turned 30 and I was not vice president. And I spent my 30th birthday upset, in despair, not mad, because I wasn't mad that they didn't give me, the promotion. I was bit down on myself because, you're nothing. Man, if you're not vice president by 30, man, you're not really who you think you are. Maybe you're not cut out for success. What's wrong with you? All of these crazy things. So then 6 months into my 30th year, they promote me to vice president. To my surprise, nothing in my life changed. I was doing the same job. I was working on the same projects. I was going the same places. Maybe they gave me a little bump in salary. That was it. So here I was, stressing myself out. Couldn't even enjoy my 30th birthday. Why? Because of an unmanaged and an unset expectation. This is why I wrote this book. Unmanaged expectations are robbing people of the power of the moment, robbing people of contentment, robbing people of joy now. Because so often we're focused on, I will be happy when I have the money for the house, when I pay off my credit cards, when I'm out of debt, when I've saved enough for the kids' school, when I got enough for the car. I will be happy when. The problem with that is you're making a false assumption. And I talk about this in the book. How do you know you'll be happy then? My experience, if you're not happy now, you will not be happy then. And if you are happy then, it's going to be temporary. Because whatever the then is, whatever the external thing is you're outsourcing your happiness to, it can only make you happy for a moment. Because external things are temporary in terms of our happiness, but we got to find the internal happiness. So I wrote this in the book so you can learn that the key to managing expectations and the key to happiness starts within and doing our work.